Today you're going to learn how to use color balances on Photoshop to turn this image into this. So if you watch till the end of this video, you'll know how to use this entire list of color balances. Everything from selective color, gradient map, all the way up to solid color. So if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to this channel and please like this video, and if you have any questions, you can comment down below and I'll reply to you within 48 hours. So let's get started. So there are plenty of ways to change colors on Photoshop. And it all depends on what kind of image you're working with and what kind of effect that you're going for. So I'm going to show you all the different techniques that I use to really make my images stand out. So if you go down to the bottom right hand corner here, there's this little icon, a little circle icon, and it's called the adjustment layer icon. So if you click on that, there's all of these options right here. So solid color, gradient, photo filter, and we're going to play with all of these effects to see what kind of results that we get on this image here. So let's start with solid color. So solid color, all it does is it just creates a new layer and it just adds a color, and you can change the color to anything that you want. So we can change this to, let's just say, like a red, a dark maroon red, and we can hit OK. And now we can play around with the different effects on this layer. So right here, if you click on something like, let's just say overlay, or maybe let's just say color, so we got like a pink color. And you can click back on this, you can double click on this, and now you can change the colors. So you can maybe change it to a green, or you can change it to a blue, anything that you want. So that's just a solid color applied on top of the layer. So let's click OK on that, and I'm going to hide this layer. So that's not the effect that I'm going for. So if you wanted like a black and white image, you can just apply a solid color and just give it a black color, and then you have a black and white image. So let's go back to the next one now. This one's called gradient. So all this does is it just applies a gradient. So you can apply a white gradient, or you can apply a black gradient. There's so many different options here. This isn't an effect that I use that often. So let's close that one as well. The next one is called pattern. So this is also something that I don't really use that often. You can choose a customized image from here, and you can choose a certain pattern, and then you can overlay that on top of the image, and you can get all these different types of effects. So this is something I don't really use that often either. So those three effects right at the top, those are quite old effects from the old days of Photoshop, but it's still there just in case people still want to use them. Now this brightness and contrast is something that I still use quite often. So if you click on this new layer comes up called brightness and contrast. And if you double click here, you'll also see this window right here called the properties window. So if you play around with the brightness graph, the more you move it to the right, the more brighter the image gets. The more you move it to the left, the less bright it gets. And the contrast just makes the colors or the dark parts of this image even darker. So if I move it further to the right, it makes it even darker. If I move it further to the left, it just makes it lighter. So let me just move slightly to the right and maybe just a little bit brighter. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. So before it looked like this, now it's like this. So you can see the details in the image a little bit more. So let's keep that effect there, and I'm going to go back to the adjustment layer again, and this time I'm going to choose levels. So levels is something I also use every now and then. So it's quite similar to the brightness and contrast. You just play around with this right here, and you can make it brighter. You can play with the middle arrow right here, which makes it more brighter or more darker. You can also play with this, which makes it a bit more extreme. So let's play around with that a little bit more. It just kind of makes all the lighter colors pop out a little bit more. So there we go. I think I like that effect. So before it looked like this, now you can see the darker colors more darker and the lighter colors more lighter. So it just adds a bit more light to your image. So let's keep that effect as well. Let's go back to the next one, which is curves. So if you've already applied these two, which is the levels and the brightness and contrast, the curves don't really make a huge difference. So you can see it getting more brighter, but I think it's already quite bright enough. So you can just with curves, you can play around with this graph. So you can add like a certain point in this graph and move that point around, and I can also add a second point if I wanted to, and I can move that here and maybe a third one. So it gets quite extreme. So this is it's changed quite a bit, and I think I liked what it looked like before better. So we're going to hide the curves layer. So usually I only add about 2 points to this graph. So if you added a second one, you can just hit delete, and you just have 2 points here to work with. So I'm just going to leave the curves effect alone for this image. So this is what you do. You just keep applying all of these effects and see which one of these effects work best on your image. So let's go back and let's just try exposure. So this is just like before the exposure, so you can all the whiter colors get whiter if you push this forward. But I think it's already quite white. And the offset, so this is kind of like the shadows, so you can make the shadows a little bit darker if you wanted to, but I think it's already quite dark. And the gamma, which is like the most dominant color on this image, which is greens. So we can make the greens a bit more green if we wanted to. I think that looks pretty good. The greens does look more better as it gets more greener. So let's see what it looked like before by clicking on the hide tool. And I think that's actually a pretty good effect. Yeah, I actually think I like it there. Maybe I might go back to the levels and might make it a slightly darker or even a bit lighter. Yep, I think it looks good there. So let's go back again and let's choose another effect, and this time let's choose vibrance. So this is this just kind of adds takes all of the colors and makes it pop out a bit more. So it will make the reds more red, it will make the greens more green, and saturation, you can see that it does the same thing, and you can see the colors are a bit more dominant now. So I think I actually like it there, so let's keep it there as well. Cool. So let's go to the next one now, and this time let's go to hue and saturation. So this is quite an extreme way of changing colors. So there's few options here under this tool. There's one called master, which will change all of the colors in this image, and if you choose reds, it will only change the reds. If you choose yellows, it will only change the yellows. So let's start with master, and you can see all of the colors changing. So I don't really want an effect like that, but if you play around with the thing in the middle, you can make your image like more black and white. It can lean towards just one certain color if you wanted to, so the colors are a bit more blended in. But I think I actually like it when the colors are a bit more popped out. But I don't think that this master effect is actually doing anything good. But let's say you wanted her dress to stand out a little bit more. You can just choose the reds, and you can make the dress maybe a different color or a brighter red. So it's only making it slightly more pink, so that this effect isn't working that well. So I'm glad I'm making these types of effects, because these effects aren't just going to do whatever you want it to do. You kind of have to play around with it, see which one works best and all of that, and you have to delete some of them. You have to maybe move some of the effects above the other ones, and then you'll find that exactly the right effect that you're looking for. So let's close this one, because I think the dress actually looks quite bright as it is. Let's go back to the next one now. Let's go to color balance. So now this one just kind of balances all the colors together. So it just kind of makes the entire image kind of blend in. And this is kind of a good way to, let's say there's too many different colors everywhere, then this is a good way to kind of make the entire image kind of balance together. So I think I actually like it about there. I do want the greens to pop out a little bit more. Cool, I think that looks pretty good. So this is what it looked like before, now it's this. So let's go back to black and white. So this is black and white. This is a really useful effect if you're trying to create black and white images. So now you just play around with this, and you can make certain parts of the image more darker, like maybe her dress, maybe the background should be a little bit lighter, so you can make that really light, and you can just see her standing out. And it looks like, like an olden day black and white photo. So it's a really cool effect that you can go for. So this is a cool effect just for black and white images, but that's not what I'm going for. So let's hide this. So next, let's go to photo filter. So this just adds a certain color over the image. So we're going for like a warm filter. We can add like maybe a green. Then we can just make that green quite dominant like this, or we can make it slightly lighter. So it depends on what you want, but I don't think I want like a filter over the image, so I'm just going to hide that as well. So let's go back to channel mixer. So this isn't something I work with that often either. This is just changes a bit too much, but maybe on some other images it will work good for you. But I think that actually looks pretty good. When I moved the blue line over, it actually made the image look pretty good actually. So I can make maybe, yeah, that looks quite interesting there. looks like an old 1980s photo or something like that. So you never know what actually works. That's why you have to play around with all of these effects to see what effect works best on your image. And I've been using Photoshop for 10 years and I still can't really figure out, I can't tell you right away this image and this effect will work perfectly together. You have to test it out and see which one works best. So I think, yeah, I think I like it just about there. Yep, that looks good. So now let's go to color lookup. So this isn't something I use that often. So this is like an effect that you can go for. Let's say you want like an old camera effect, like a Kodak camera effect. So you can choose that and it gives it that effect. Or maybe you want like a Fuji camera effect and it gives it that effect. Let's try drop blues. And this isn't something I use that often either. Moonlight. But you can upload your own. There's actually like certain effects that you can download off the internet and upload it to your Photoshop files, and you can apply that as well. But I still never really used these effects that often. So let's click this off and let's stick with this one. So I'm going to group all of these effects together. So I'm just going to go all the way down to the bottom, choose this last channel mix or channel color layer right here, and hold shift, and I'm going to click on this one. So it selects all of these layers and I'll group all of them together. So we can just see what this looked like before and after. So I think we've got quite a difference there. So let's keep going and let's keep adding more and more effects. So let's look up. This is invert. So this isn't the effect I'm going for, but it just inverts all the colors around. So it's quite a cool effect, but I don't really use it that often. So let's try posterize. So this isn't an effect that I use that often either, but I've seen a lot of other designers use this effect, but it just kind of posterizes the image. So it just takes less colors on this image. So let's turn this effect off. Let's try the next one, which is threshold, which just turns the image black and white, but there's no gray on this image now. So you can, the more you move this graph to the left, the whiter it becomes. The more you move it to the right, the darker it becomes. So that's not the effect I'm looking for either. So let's click that off. And let's go into gradient map. So it just adds a certain gradient to the entire image. And there's different types of gradients that you can choose here. So let's say you wanted like a red gradient instead. You can just double click here and you can choose the red color. And there you go. Now you have a red gradient. So that's not the effect that I'm going for, so I'm going to close that. And this final one, selective color, this is one that I do use quite often. So let's select this, and there's a few options here, like colors and under colors, there's reds, yellows, and all of that. So this is quite similar to hue and saturation, where you can change the certain colors within this image, like the reds and yellows and all of that. But this selective color one is far more accurate. So I'm trying to change the red, and the only red in this image is her dress, and parts of her hair is kind of red as well. So you can kind of see that changing a little bit there. So let's say I want her dress to stand out a little bit more. I can do that here, and I can also maybe change the greens in this. So if I want to make the greens a bit more green, I can push all of these a bit more forward as well. So that looks pretty good. And let's say I want to go neutrals is also an effect I use quite often. It just changes the entire image, and usually an effect like that is a bit too much, but I've noticed that with the selective color layer, this actually doesn't change it too much. So let's push this a little bit far to the right. You can see the greens coming out a little bit more. I think that looks pretty good there. Magenta, that's a bit too much. Yep, that looks good. Bit more yellows, or maybe less yellows. Yeah, I think a slight touch of yellows, not too bad. And more blacks or less blacks. I think that looks good there. So it looked like this before. So actually I think I like it better without the selective color. So usually the selective color does work well, but in this case it actually didn't work well. So again, that's the importance of testing all the different effects on Photoshop. So let's click off the selective color. So we have this final image now. Before it looked like this, now it looks like this. So it really depends on what you want. Not everyone's going to like this image. Maybe they actually liked it, what it looked like originally. Maybe they want more greens to be shown here. So if you wanted more greens, you can just scroll down and you can go back to color balance, and you can just push this graph more further to the right, and you can see more greens come out. So it's really up to you and what you want, and just make sure you play around with all of these effects right here. So that's it for this video. If you have any questions, you can comment down below and I'll reply to you within 48 hours. Make sure you like and subscribe. If you like this video, it will really help out this channel quite a bit. So please like this video and please make sure you subscribe, and I will come back to you in the next video.